Welcome back to a special Pride Month episode of Resistance Radio. As always, joined by my usual co-hosts, James and Dane. And then, once again, one of our second biggest since we had Christian yesterday, and also one of our first guests on the show. So we figured, why not farm that content well again and bring him on back? And we will have a link to his first episode in the description if you want to know more about him.
It was back when we all recorded from our bedrooms on Google Meets.
And we were called Left for Dead.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Dead naming our podcast in Pride Month, Emma. Welcome back, Amaad.
Yeah.
You are a very, very busy man. What have you been up to lately?
So good and bad. The entire country is running into re-election season.
Yeah.
This is also the midterms. So the ballot will look pretty robust. So we have a deeply competitive Democratic primary against a really problematic Republican nominee named Tom Tiffany, who technically has a primary, but I don't think that will go very far. And then we have every seat for Congress is up in the state of Wisconsin, and every legislative seat in the assembly is up, and about half the state senate is up.
Hell yeah.
This is the first time that the Senate and the assembly in Wisconsin will be running on ungerrymandered maps together. And so we are already seeing some really dynamic ideas coming forward, like that there might be a possibility for a trifecta, because we are looking at the first mostly ungerrymandered maps that we've ever seen pretty much in many of our adult lives. And so it really is an exciting time because we are seeing people from all different kinds of walks of life running. I'm just excited to be able to run in the city that I love, right? We are considered the number one place to live in the United States for so many reasons, but the reason I hold close to my heart is that we take care of each other.
Yeah.
And that shows up in these really beautiful ways, like when we get a freak storm that both gives us thunder, lightning, hail, and torrential downpours all at the same time and collapses the roof of a local animal pet sanctuary. Hundreds of people responded within an hour to help take care of both our furry neighbors and the people and the workers that were in there. And that is what makes it so special. So I'm so proud to be running in a community that leads with caring first, and that is what they expect from their neighbors, but they also expect from their government. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I was telling Eve before we started that I always love when we chat because we both love Green Bay and we keep talking about how much Green Bay is awesome and all that shit. So we just kind of,
And then then Eve responded with, I kind of feel a little bit different about that because one, I'm young.
Yeah.
Two, I'm sober.
Yep.
She's sober. And three, I've grew up here, so it's almost like
You take it for
she
granted.
did everything.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let's be honest about we're also facing some real challenges, right? So this is the first time in American history, including in Green Bay, where the average age of a homeowner is 40, and the median age of a homeowner is 52. Meaning that if you are under 52 years old for the first time ever, homeownership is the furthest it's ever been from your first job than it's ever been in American history, right? So we are looking at a state that has not improved the minimum wage in 20 years, right? In 20 years, we have not increased the minimum wage. We still do not have collective bargaining rights. We still don't have the union and worker power that we need. We still allow predatory practices in loans where you can charge 1,000% in the state. So while I love the values that our community represent, and I love representing that values, it doesn't mean that things are perfect. In fact, we are looking at a world that is more unequal than it's ever been in our lifetimes and in previous generations because we've allowed corporations to run away with tons of profits. We've allowed for policy not to catch up, and government hasn't been the force for good that it should be. But I also think that we are proving here in Green Bay that it can be.
Absolutely.
That it will bend towards justice and equality if we pull it towards that. And that's what we've been doing in Green Bay. And so I completely respect the idea that, like, for all the love and wonderness of how we take care of one another, the truth of the matter is that lots of things suck right now. And we need government to be a force for good, which is why we cannot afford the chaos and cruelty and conspiracy theories of the far right. My joke has always been that no one actually cares that people are Democrats or Republicans. They just don't want them to be jerks. And so I'm the anti-jerk party. Like, I think we should be.
Everyone should.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That we could be doing a lot more if we
Yeah.
stop worrying about trying to punish people
Mhm.
and trying to make it easier for people to thrive. And I do think that Green Bay is doing that more than so many other places are, but it doesn't mean that that project is finished.
Yeah. Would you like an update on the Safe Haven fundraiser?
I would.
33K. Yeah.
See, like 24 hours.
Yep.
Right. We're talking about
Uh-oh.
24 hours,
We uploaded at midnight, so
even less.
yeah.
Policy can fall short,
Yeah.
but you
Mhm.
can't make people care who don't care.
Exactly.
But one of the things that I think that happens in Green Bay is that we care. And that we take care of each other. And so you can't do that everywhere. There are big cities that can't raise $33,000 in less than 24 hours for our fur babies.
Yep.
That is just not a thing that happens in some major cities.
Yeah.
But in this area and the people who care and the people connected to the people that care, we can do incredible, seemingly impossible things. Like, I didn't know that there were that many cat strollers in Green Bay
Oh, I didn't
until
either.
until people showed up with their own cat strollers at like 8 and 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
In the middle of a storm. Right. It was one of the most beautiful things to
Yeah.
witness and see. And I'm deeply proud of our community. And I hope to keep taking that value and bringing it to Madison. Right. That we need to be much more, Madison needs to be much more like Green Bay, and we need to be much less Madison in the fact that the capital's there, not Madison, the city. So please,
Mhm.
Madisonians, don't yell at me.
Yeah.
But we need
100%.
but we need the value of taking care of each other, and that being the default, instead of that being the exception. And I think that I'm hoping to continue bringing that to Madison on behalf of the residents of Green Bay.
I can vouch that Amaad is a rep that cares because I don't even live in Green Bay and I can't go to anything without running into it. And I live in Shawano, and the only time I've ever run into Elijah Banky is specifically at the state fair in the last week of August. That's the only time I've ever
That's
seen the
very specific.
man.
But unfortunately, you get stuck seeing me all the time.
Unfortunately, in air quotes. But as much as Green Bay is a loving, wonderful community, there are always a couple of bad eggs. Some that come from out of state to be rotten all over the place. Example.
I'm here at St. John's Park in Green Bay, Wisconsin, which previously held playground equipment, but now holds a homeless encampment 24 hours a day. Yep, this is where your kids used to play. City park, city funded. It's in Amaad's district. So as a favor and to be fair to Amaad Rivera-Wagner, I just want to show off and highlight his district. Isn't it cute? Yeah, you can thank Amaad Rivera-Wagner and Alyssa Profit for this. And hey, if you'd like to see more of this in your city, Green Bay, by all means, vote for Amaad. See, Amaad, I'm telling people to vote for you. It's nice, right?
Well, the scariest thing to a conspiracy theorist is the truth.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's so much to unpack there, but I just want to step back and say Green Bay has also been ground zero for conspiracy theorists and far-right extremists who think that the best way to change the voting patterns of Green Bay is to threaten, harass, and coerce people and use fear and intimidation to divide us so that they can somehow get votes. I don't know where that works, but it does not work in Green Bay. And so it is somewhat just disheartening that we already went through this, right? We went through election conspiracy theory for years where people's lives were threatened, poll workers were attacked, people's families like mine were stalked and harassed, they slashed my tires because we had bad actors who could not believe.
Got your tires slashed?
Oh yeah, they went all in. And they just couldn't believe that Joe Biden won Green Bay, Wisconsin. There was multiple internets that allegedly changed the votes, except none of our machines are connected to the internet. And that got really crazy. It got so crazy that the Republican-led, gerrymandered, informed legislature at the time tried to conduct an investigation into the city and tried to arrest the mayor of Green Bay and the mayor of Madison.
The city clerk keeps getting sued over election.
Celestine.
Yes, Celestine Jeffries, amazing, hardworking civil servant woman, constantly gets sued over nonsense voter fraud allegations that end up going nowhere.
Every single time, just a waste of money. And these are the same groups and the same people who called for white supremacy groups to come and attack and take vengeance on me, the mayor, and the clerk, right outside of City Hall. And so while I would say what is frustrating or sad is that we've already seen this show and we didn't like it before.
Yeah.
And so we don't want the remix.
No.
We don't want the rerun. And so having an Alabama resident whose real closest ties to Green Bay is her long list of CCAP entries isn't really the person that I'm looking to ask me about my district or my community. It's just where I'm at. And so here's the thing, I get it. She and others are trying to rally what they believe are MAGA extremists. As we talked about earlier, no one really cares if you're a Democrat or Republican in Green Bay. They care, do you show up? Are you not a jerk? And so while they were literally filming people in the park during some of the most vulnerable times, and let's be like very clear, one of the reasons I'm very sensitive about this is I grew up homeless. Me and my mother were homeless for the most of my early part of my life. We lived in cars, on couches, and shelters. The idea that someone, not even from this community, would go and film people in their most vulnerable moments to try to make a political point where they have never helped, never supported, never got involved, but trying to score political points by weaponizing vulnerable people, not only should be disqualifying, anyone that they are supporting should be disqualifying for public office. Because you know what we're not going to do? We don't ask people what their political affiliation is when we try to make sure they get housed. We don't ask people their political affiliation if they're a good foster parent for dog dads and cat moms, right? Because we think that care isn't rooted in a political litmus test.
Exactly.
And so for somebody to go to and get every detail wrong, right?
Yeah.
That the state legislature might not have that much to do with a single park and single district. And I do respect the idea that I'm the most powerful being in politics, and I'm both in charge of the city. I also control the entire legislature, and I'm able to curb and create all homelessness all on my own. I am grateful for the acknowledgement of the great and powerful man that I am. But the truth of the matter is, treating vulnerable people like they are political pawns is exactly why people hate politics and they hate getting involved. We cannot allow bad actors to try to make bad faith arguments when we have real problems to solve. And I'm deeply proud of what we have done to address this issue, but what we're not going to do is weaponize vulnerable people when they're at their worst moments to make political talking points. That's just unacceptable.
Yeah, and what's so funny to me about this for her is it's obvious performative outrage because she's a grifter, because she also has been going relentlessly after the Hope Center for Safe Haven, which is getting them off the streets so they're not in the park. And it's like, what? But like for me, I think the most moving thing that happened to me in Green Bay, as far as what you were saying about how nobody cares about your affiliation as long as you're willing to take care of each other, was on election night 2024. It was you, a Democrat you were originally Massachusetts, right? Yeah. Me, a student, whatever. I'm just there. Mark Becker, who used to be the chair of the Bryan County Republican Party. And then John Shelton, who's a pretty, flaming haired lefty professor type. So it was like this wide, diverse group of people where we had a Republican, some all this stuff going on. And we were just all there in solidarity together that we were not going to let 2020 happen again.
That's right.
And it was just good to see. That was when I knew that Green Bay was a different place.
Right.
Good point.
Before we continue, I need to go powder my face.
And also turn into a man.
Amaad's like Schrodinger's politician. They say the same thing with like Biden too, where they're like, oh, he's raising gas prices. Then people are like, well, so if that means if it goes down, he's lowering it.
He's either a doddering old fool or the biggest crime boss mastermind.
That is the most classic propaganda tactic imaginable, is that your opposition is both all-knowing and all-powerful, but also completely weak and
inept.
Completely inept.
So I'm the scariest person that's ever existed. And also, I get nothing done.
Dana, you got a lot uglier all of a sudden.
Yeah, no, that's what happens when you talk about politics a few times.
How does Amaad still look so good?
Depends on the day.
It's clearly adrenochrome.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I wanted to talk about what we have done. Right. And so one of the things that we're hearing from people who want to make political points and not actually want to solve problems. One of the things I'm actually really proud of is how much work we have done in the last couple of years on addressing people experiencing homelessness. First and foremost, the idea that everyone at every income level is becoming housing insecure in Green Bay, meaning that they are spending most of their income trying to get access to housing. So any solution is really about how do we help people across the spectrum. And so one of the things that I just passed that actually got bipartisan support is a bill based on Habitat for Humanity. And the reason I'm so passionate about it is because the reason my family went from being unhoused and housing unstable was that a Habitat for Humanity home was what was built. So So I built a
Yeah,
home with
yeah.
perfect strangers that changed the life trajectory of me and my entire family.
Yeah.
And so we created a bill that modeled that would literally save a first-time home buyer $270 a month for the entire length of their mortgage.
That's huge.
Right. And so it is one of the most historic and most dynamic housing bills. And why it's so dynamic is it's one of the only housing bills that goes from you being from the bottom of the income all the way to the middle class.
Yeah.
Most of them cut you off.
Right.
So we punish people working hard. So not only was I proud to put this bill
Yeah.
forward as a first term person in the minority,
Right.
the idea that I was able to pass not one, but two bills.
Yeah.
Right. And the second issue around housing is that often people are looking for work that pays.
Yep.
Right. And so one of the other bills that we passed is a DACA bill that allows dreamers who are qualified, who are able to get jobs, to be able to get in the jobs that they're qualified for
Hell
in
yeah.
our community. Right.
Hell
So
yeah.
we wanted, so one of the things I did as a legislator that I have control over is made it easier to get a job, made it fought for increasing the minimum wage, and passed a bill that makes housing ownership more accessible than it's ever been in the last decade or two. So that's just one.
that.
But two, I want to step up for the city.
Yeah.
I was the mayor's chief of staff. One of the things I was deeply proud of is that to address housing insecurity, we built a whole new neighborhood in JBS.
Yep.
I was the project lead on building an income diverse neighborhood that is coming online this year,
Sweet.
which is super incredible. That's connected to food access, that has recreational spaces, and allows people of different incomes to live in those neighborhoods.
Hell yeah.
And then on top of that, we then use HUD dollars to create our own caseworkers in the city. And because we have done casework, we've had the most people getting access to housing than we've ever had.
Fuck yeah.
Because the city invested in direct contact with people in St. John's and other parks across the city.
Yeah.
There is no 24-hour encampment in
Yeah.
St. John's.
Yeah.
I think that's, I guess when the truth isn't close to you, just make it up.
Yeah.
And so I don't know where that came from.
I did voter registration not that long ago, and there were a reasonable number of unhoused people traveling through that area. There's some that stopped and sat,
Right.
Right.
but there was no permanent spot.
Right.
And I think one thing too, just to kind of interject a little bit that I think would help, because I've had to explain this to people before, but Amaad, if you could kind of explain how homelessness doesn't always look
Right.
like people living at a park.
Right.
And I think that kind of ties into what you were saying about every income bracket being, housing insecure.
There is the way the world consumes homelessness
Mhm.
and the way that it shows up.
Right.
A lot of the families that are experiencing homelessness are jumping from cars to couches,
Yep.
to friends' homes, to family homes.
Mhm.
Sometimes they're perfect strangers. Sometimes they're using motels and hotels.
Yep.
Sometimes they have stability for a time. Oftentimes they're actually working
Right.
at the same
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Right. And so we've got to stop, one, just kind of making homeless people feel like they don't have the same humanity and respect that everyone
Yes.
deserves, right? Because these are people who are also navigating the world and having complications and issues, and that we should be creating pathways to access, not demonization.
Mhm.
And that's why you don't go to a park and film a bunch of people and their kids. It's
Right.
that are experiencing homelessness. If or assuming that just because they're in the park, they're homeless.
Right.
They're more our community members than she is.
A lot of us are closer to them than
Right.
we are to
An Alabama resident
right. Yeah.
with a long record. But
Yeah.
it's also important for us to know that getting people who are experiencing homelessness that are more visible, like in a park, their journey to getting housing secure may not look the way you want it to.
Right.
You can't
Right.
just tell someone it's time for you to go in
Yeah.
to this perfect picket fence home.
Right.
That just isn't how homelessness works
Right.
in our community and elsewhere.
Right.
We have to work where people are at on the journey that they're on and getting them the best resources we can.
Yep.
I will say this, and I do think I'm gonna go be crazy for a moment.
Mhm.
There is
Love
a
it.
point that she didn't make, but I do think is important, is that when we don't address real issues, when we don't actually say that we have to solve both housing and homelessness, there are ways in which parks don't get used the way they can for anybody,
Yep.
right? When a park should be a place where you're enjoying, meeting people, hanging out, we have seen that park not necessarily get to be its best self,
Right.
right? And that people experiencing homelessness don't get to enjoy that park in its full experience either, right? So we do have to balance quality of life, which is how do we make sure our parks work for everybody and that parks aren't being used in the wrong ways,
Right.
and that we're keeping people safe, whether they're housed or unhoused. But we also can't think that there's some quick solution. If there was a quick
Right.
solution, the former Republican mayor would have solved it when we were having problems 10 years ago.
Right.
We are seeing, yes, an uptick, but we are also seeing the most comprehensive solutions that we've ever seen come out of the city that I'm proud of. And this legislature, which should be impossible, we're getting done. So I'm deeply proud of the people who show up every day. I'm proud of the folks who are providing support and help, including St. John's,
Yeah.
including the various homeless agencies in the city. We are doing more than we've ever done.
Yeah.
And while we may not be perfect, we don't deserve to be attacked.
Yeah, and even some local organizations go like monthly and hand out food at St. John's and stuff like that. So like it yeah, no, definitely. That's why when you said at Pride Amaad, you made a joke about how you don't do anything.
Yeah.
And I was like, come on, out of all the people to say that.
Yeah.
I just want to make 2 points quick. First is that it is impressive as a member of the minority in the legislature, you getting 2 bills passed. Something I've said multiple times, that a lot of right-wingers and even MAGA are on board with leftist policies
Yeah.
as long as you avoid the trigger words.
Correct.
The second thing is between 40 and 60% of unhoused people actually have jobs. And the thing is that when economic hardship increases, the percentage of unhoused people as both a raw percentage and
Yes.
as a total number increases.
Yep.
Andrea, who the fuck do you think is in charge running the economy right now?
Oh,
Not
wait.
here, so I'm going to avoid the language I want to use, but you can infer it from our other clips.
Actually, this is relevant. So remember we did react to one of her clips on this show where she had said that she was celebrating Bridge and Power Plant Day in the Iran War and that she was watching it like her favorite sports team.
Yeah.
That's what created this current economy that we're in, actually. That's a funny coincidence. I don't know.
Yeah.
But can I give you another example of like just the disingenuousness?
Yeah.
Is that this week alone, we had a bipartisan bill coming out of the federal government that actually mirrored some of the bills that I've introduced
Yeah.
in the state,
Yeah.
including not allowing private companies to monopolize buying rental properties.
Yep.
It had bipartisan support in Congress. So yes, it's hard to find,
Veto-proof majority.
it's hard to pass things in the legislature in Madison. It is nearly impossible to get something passed in Congress. So they passed this bill with veto-proof majorities. And then this current president decided, because there wasn't enough anti-immigrant policies being pushed forward through the SAVE Act, that he would not sign the bill into law.
Yep.
So we are currently being held up by a rare bipartisan effort on housing policies that we need, including holding corporations accountable.
Well, and it's even similar to the bipartisan border bill.
Exactly.
Like, and don't get me wrong, there are things in that bill
Right,
I
right.
didn't 100% agree with everything.
Right.
But they complain about I've said it before. They dig a hole, jump in the hole, and then they're like, "Why am I in the hole?"
That's right,
It's like,
right.
So with Ronald Reagan, actually, he also had a similar thing while he was still running for president, went behind the government and told the Iranians that he would give them a better deal than what Carter was offering. They just had to hold out until the election was over. And that had a huge impact on that, and a
Got him in
huge
trouble.
impact. Yeah. And so
Clearly not
Ronald
enough.
Reagan, it got him in trouble because he's in fucking hell now.
I don't believe in hell, but I wish it would. I wish it were real just for Ronald Reagan.
The thing about pointing out a problem, it's very easy to point out problems,
Yeah.
especially when you've done no homework.
yes.
If you've done zero homework, you don't know you've never even talked to anybody,
Mhm.
and you just want to point out problems, that's an easy job,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like anyone can do that
Yeah.
job. And then what's worse is you're doing it for clicks
Yep.
and money,
Right.
and then for political talking points for a certain candidate who's so extreme that she needs a MAGA influence for Alabama to support her
Right.
in a Green Bay election. The fact that they're getting it so wrong, when if they really, really cared, you don't need a title to make a difference.
No.
When the pet sanctuary roof fell in, no one needed to be a perfect foster cat.
And you probably already mentioned it, but nobody was asking if they were Republicans.
That's right. Right. People stepped up and said, let's solve this problem.
Yeah.
Let's help the best way we can. So this is my call to everybody. We don't need a litmus test for making a difference in your community. What we need are people who are going to stand up in our communities and help, regardless of who shows up
Right.
or how they show up.
Hell yeah.
And so the most it comes off as radical, but the idea that we just help you
Right.
with no strings attached, with no issues,
Yeah.
that you're both elected officials and the people running for those positions don't have to put a litmus test on making sure you're good. I don't know her very well. I've never met her.
Right.
I don't know the candidate she's supporting very well. But here's the thing. I also wish that they have access to secure and safe housing.
Yeah.
Yep.
I want them to have living wages that they can meet their expenses. I want them a healthcare that is defined between a patient and their healthcare provider
Right.
and not an insurance company. They may not like me, but the policies I want will improve their lives too.
Yes.
That is what we need more of. And so I'm just saddened that someone's trying to come to our community and use hate and division to both make money and try to make a political point.
Yep.
When what we need more is people rowing in the same direction. If
Yep.
you want to come help me solve homelessness, work with me.
Yeah.
We've never turned anyone away. Right?
Yeah.
I've attended over 500 events since I've been here. I've held 32 town halls. We've had issue-based roundtables from healthcare to minimum wages to housing today. I've introduced over 50 bills, co-authored over 200, and then as a member of the minority, passed 2 bills, something that people who've been there for a decade can't claim.
Yep.
Because I'm empowered by the people of this community, and the best ideas come from us.
Yep.
And my job is to make sure that turns into real practice and policy.
Yes.
And we don't need more of division and hatred, anger and confusion, or chaos or cruelty. We need more care and understanding, more empathy and support. And we need a government that cares about you and not about who you voted for, if you vote at all.
For sure.
And so I'm just disheartened
Yeah.
that she felt that she could come to our community and cause problems. And I hope she finds peace and hope and joy in Alabama. But if she does want to move here, we welcome everybody.
And segueing into the other topic that we had, the farmers market. This is something that I was going to focus more on solutioning based stuff.
Yeah.
So for those that don't know, in Green Bay, we've had a project going on for the last 5 years. Well, I don't know if I'd say going on, but it's just been sitting there for 5 years. And it's the public market in downtown on Broadway that's supposed to do something for us
I was promised it would be ready for the NFL draft.
in 2020, April 2025. It is now June 2026.
Yeah.
Still no progress. But that project is run by Brian Johnson and On Broadway Inc. Brian Johnson was also on the city council, so that should tell you if there's a conflict there somewhere. But in addition to Safe Haven, right in front of Safe Haven was the farmers market on Wednesday, and they were also badly hurt by the storm that came in, partly through OBI's negligence, but we'll talk about that.
David, thanks. Wednesday's intense storms left vendors at On Broadway Farmers Market scrambling. They were scared and frustrated. Organizers of the farmers market, which runs from 3 to 8 p.m., did not cancel until 6:15 during a severe thunderstorm. Taylor Zebel spoke with a vendor about the chaos of what happened.
Someone came around at 6:10 and told us we could pack up at 6:15. The storm hit us at 6:15.
It was already pouring out at 6:10,
it was already
and they said,
pouring at
okay, at
6:10.
6:15. I was like, I'm not packing up in this downpour. It was just a downpour, and then 5 minutes later was when the gusts of winds came in
And the hail.
and took everything out.
On Broadway released a statement regarding their decision that reads in part, quote, staff followed the established severe weather protocols and closely monitored forecasts and available data following guidance from the National Weather Service throughout market day, end quote. On Broadway and the National Weather Service were communicating through emails and phone calls throughout the day on Wednesday, starting at 8:12 a.m. when NWS briefed On Broadway officials about the risk of severe thunderstorms that were coming between 5 and 8 o'clock that night. Now fast forward to 2:17, NWS received a call from On Broadway officials who were just verifying what the weather was going to look like for the rest of the night. Now at 3 o'clock is when the farmers market actually started, and a special weather statement was issued for Green Bay for ongoing thunderstorms. Now going into 2.5 hours into the farmers market, a severe thunderstorm warning is issued for Green Bay for 50-mile-per-hour winds. NWS called On Broadway officials but had to leave a message. Now looking 20 minutes later at 5:50 is the approximate start of the severe thunderstorms. And at 6:07, NWS called on Broadway officials, warning them of the severe thunderstorms that were intensifying. And finally, at 6:15, on Broadway officials told their vendors to pack up and get inside.
But we're out in the weather the whole time because once we finally got all of our stuff in, which of course, battling the storm, there's tents flying everywhere. You know, it was dangerous.
It was scary. It was
very
extremely
scary and
scary.
dangerous.
It's important to note that the National Weather Service does not make recommendations for events. They simply provide the information, and it's up to event officials to assess and make a final decision. Tonight at 5, hear why the vendors were required to show up, rain or shine. Cammie, back to you.
I also had at least one vendor reach out to me personally because I posted on Broadway Inc.'s apology post on Facebook about it. And one of their vendors was like, "Hey, I really appreciate you sticking up for us like that. That was really cool." She just said, "I'm
That's
a
nice.
vendor. I'm concerned. This is how they treated us. It's terrible." And
Right.
part of the problem, you might be thinking, well, why didn't they just go earlier? Why did they wait till they had permission? That's because On Broadway charges them a fine if they leave early. They also pay expensive vendor fees, and the all of their, for the ones that weren't able to get out in time, they actually lost some of their merchandise
Yeah.
that was damaged in the storm. The city council should just bring On Broadway and Brian Johnson in front of the council for a public community meeting and just say, what's going on with this stuff?
I guess I always thought the farmers market was just ran by the city. I
No.
didn't even know
No.
that it was ran by On Broadway.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll be honest, my assumption was that everything was canceled.
Yeah.
Because I was getting messages that like essentially everything was being
Right,
canceled, that
right.
people were really worried. And so I started getting messages. I had finally gotten home. I saw the hail, which was scaring my golden doodles. One is very good about it. The other one gets nervous. And I was like, oh, I hope no one's outside. And then I started getting pictures and messages
Yeah.
from people saying people are scrambling, that public safety had been called and they were using saws because people's tents had gotten so mangled and twisted in the air, that there were injuries, that there was people whose whole daily products that they had for the market had been wiped out. And so I just want to say, just before we even get into pointing fingers, that there was a bunch of vendors in this community who had to deal with the onslaught of this deeply inclement weather for whatever reason why it was not canceled in time, that lost both money, time, and capacity, and some of people who actually got hurt. And I think that just requires us to be more dynamic and having an assessment, meaning that this isn't just a bureaucratic response. These are people's livelihoods and lives.
Exactly.
And we want to make sure that we're being respectful and honoring. And it doesn't mean that we always get everything right. The truth of the matter is that there's a bunch of people who got hurt. There's a bunch of people who lost their livelihood, and that we either need to be better or do it differently. I love the idea of more cooperative models. You know, there and other farmers markets.
This is why you need accountability, and this is also why I believe like every re-election should be contested, because you always need some form of accountability, and accountability does not necessarily mean, oh, this person fucked up, they need to suffer.
Right.
No, it is a lot of times accountability is like, okay, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again?
Right. And I think that is what I would just like to hear generally.
Yeah.
And I get that. And I've been saying, even as a government official, I don't think that we communicate enough as a collective that something didn't go well. Maybe there is a policy or protocol that we did that we could do better, and that we're also open to feedback and criticism. And not all criticism has to be cruel. Right. That like we can do better. I don't know how that's hard. I know I always say this when I get on this podcast with you all. We treat these normal things as radical. And I just don't get it, right? Like the idea that we don't use vulnerable people for political talking points. The idea that like, hey, people got hurt and people lost their merchandise. We could have potentially done something better. Why can't we just have that conversation? Why does it have to be like the cruelty first, the cowardice first? Why can't it be community first? And I don't know. That shouldn't be that radical.
It shouldn't be, but the problem is that there are few emotions, and this is a fundamental flaw in human nature, but there are few emotions that feel as good as righteous anger. And everyone's prone to it, like ourselves included. Like just because we're leftists doesn't make us immune to it, but it is something that you need to be aware of so you can intentionally take action to combat faults in human nature.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think like the way that I look at it is like I'm obviously a very non-confrontational person, but community is also a factor of human nature too, and I think it's very important to acknowledge that. And a good friend of the show, what her passion project is like a really free market.
Yeah.
And, shout out to Sunny. I know she's been a longtime fan. But so like just stuff like that, like we need to see more of. And it was disappointing seeing I would imagine that I think this would have been like the third farmers market in a row that was canceled.
It was, yeah.
And so I would imagine that there probably had to be some sort of like, okay, like we've canceled 3.
Yeah.
Because like the way that I look at it is if they cancel the band playing,
Which they did.
They should just cancel the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because like if a band can't play, most people probably aren't going to be.
I think that's part of the problem with how OBI does it. Is it's done from the perspective of making OBI a profit, when they should, because of how much influence they have on projects in the city, and formerly had a lot more influence on city council when one of their members was, or when their president was on the council. But
Who's also the president and CEO of the public market.
yeah. And they basically are like co-opting the community language, like with the public market. They're like, "Whoa, this is great," but really it's just like an expensive mall food court. That's basically what the design of it was at the end. And I was like, that would have been the perfect place to actually do the farmers market.
I think that government officials should be more open to community feedback and innovation. And
Yes.
sometimes even basic things are innovative, right? Like, what does it look like to repurpose something where there's interest? That, like, we can have a capitalism that can care. I also think that, like, we can take systems that can just be a little bit more responsive to people's needs. Not everything has to be met with like a level of you have no feedback, you don't matter. We did everything right, you did everything wrong. They'd be like, oh, like that's an interesting perspective, right?
Yeah.
And I want to make sure I'm open to that too. Like I said earlier, like there is a quality of life issue when one of our parks is used in a purpose that isn't meant for anyone's benefit. If there was an encampment in the park at 24 hours a day, that would be an indictment of like, why don't we do something better? What can we do? It doesn't mean that we haven't done anything. But the same thing with the inclement weather. It's Green Bay, Wisconsin. It's actually not the first time we've had hail in the summer. It's not the first time we've had a snowstorm.
Right.
Not that was a snowstorm, but we had a
It
snowstorm.
looked like it.
We had 3 feet of snow in like, what was it? Early May, late April?
Something like that, yeah.
Right, so it's not like we don't know inclement weather. And so we have to be people who can respond. And if we become so static that something as simple as 3 weeks of bad weather leads us to a decision that potentially could put people in danger, I think we need to revisit that decision-making process. And I don't think that should be a criticism.
Yeah.
Meaning that should be such an obvious answer that we all can do better by being clear.
And if OBI actually cares about the community like they claim, then they should welcome that conversation and be like, look, we get it, we screwed up. How can we make it better? Give us your suggestions.
Right.
But
I will say there is a serious issue when it comes to especially unhoused and marginalized people. And that it's a concept called the race to the bottom. So you have a group of cities next to each other and one of the cities cuts service funding.
Right.
That'll lead to an influx of marginalized people to the other neighboring communities, creating a strain on finances, which leads to the other communities trying to cut the funding quicker so that they don't have to deal with the problem.
Right.
It ends up being this complicated thing, but the point I'm trying to make is that this is not something any one person can solve.
Correct. And thank you for pointing that out, because in Brown County, we've watched other municipalities cut their services, block access to bus expansion, specifically citing that they're worried about undesirables coming to their communities, right?
people.
Right, exactly. And we've literally had governments talk about, well, the homeless people go, that's the words they use, go to Green Bay, right? And so it is, again, very frustrating when someone wants to point out a problem and not actually do any work on the solutions. And when many of us are working on them, we are doing that and more than we've ever done. But it's, again, weaponizing ignorance, that like it's easy to point out, claim that you have an answer, just no one wants to listen.
Right. And so I guess, thinking through all of this, one thing that has always deeply annoyed me, especially coming from a like environmental policy standpoint, is how reactive we are to things. And so talking about, how it's important to have feedback and, to like what James was saying, how just because somebody, fucks up once, you
Right.
don't boot
Right.
them out.
Right.
Yep.
How do you also balance that?
Right. Part of being proactive was that when you are in touch with people and communicating with them, you start seeing a through line, right?
Right.
And we saw that one of the big things that we saw was people were saying everybody works, right? So we, even our poorest people
Yeah. Yeah.
who have a job,
Yeah.
Chipotle
right.
pays $18 an hour in our area, sometimes up to $20 an hour,
Yeah.
right? So it's not that people aren't working hard; it's that the system is hardly working. And so
Yes.
people are a paycheck, a health crisis, a sickness, a familial challenge, a divorce, a breakup away from being close to homelessness.
Yeah, what is
losing
it
their
like?
benefits.
60% of the population in the U.S. is $500 away from,
Right.
being bankrupt.
So the idea that like one, that the only vulnerable populations are the ones you can see, but two, that people are asking and clamoring for real solutions.
Right.
And the other thing I tell people is that not everyone's gonna have the perfect solution. So just because we've spent time in St. John's, they might not know the answer to housing insecurity.
Yeah.
But my job, I believe, as a public official, is to take their experiences, turn that into real research investigative work, and come out with policies that make a difference. And we've done that,
Yeah.
which is why we have 2 caseworkers that the city runs, because the county didn't step up. And we've seen more people get into housing than we ever have.
Yeah.
It's why we were able to pass a housing bill based on Habitat for Humanity that goes from someone making $0 all the way up to middle class.
Hell yeah.
It's why we have a blueprint to end homelessness that brings the entire city together to do that. It's why we have public-private partnerships to do this work. And so I just don't want people shitting on our community because they just showed up 10 minutes ago.
Right.
Because people are working really, really, really hard to solve these problems that seem intractable. And we are making a big dent in it. We could always do better.
Yep.
But I'm not going to insult the people of this community who are working desperately and diligently to do it. And if someone thinks that I'm the king of all things that are possible, if I ever get that position, I will happily end homelessness. I would love to do that, including for my own family that I experienced. But until I get that crown, I am doing the work of building the coalitions
Yeah.
and listening and turning that listening into public policy that actually makes a difference in people's lives.
Hell yeah.
I'm so happy that I know such an all-powerful man. Some favors to call, man. We're almost out of time. We had some heavy conversations in a couple different directions, but I'd like to end on a lighter note because politics doesn't always need to be so much about negativity all the time. So you are wrapping up your first term in the state legislature, and I just kind of want to know how your experience has been. Like, what has gone better than expected? What's been challenging? And what are your goals for the next term?
It's been an honor of my lifetime to represent Green Bay.
Hell.
And the reason why is like I feel like I get to brag about this community, from these podcasts to the public policy that we're doing to the partnerships we're creating, from the really free markets to Pride to the Trades Day that we organize. What we're doing in Green Bay is creating a world where everyone can actually thrive, and we're doing it together. We're doing it as with one another, and we're doing it in the most inclusive way possible, where we're saying, we don't need you to agree with us, but we want you to get to work.
Yep.
And so we've launched the $20 minimum wage campaign out of Green Bay. We've launched protecting and expanding Medicaid out of Green Bay. And so that part of the job has been an absolute joy. Working with all of you from like college roundtable, right, all the way into protest, right?
Yeah.
I remind people that we've done things that everyone thought was impossible in just 2 years using this position. When Elon Musk came to Green Bay to try to buy a Supreme Court race, we organized over 1,000 people in the rain to meet him there.
Yeah.
And then we won by, at the time, the largest amount of Supreme Court race. And what we did is we stepped up, right? And so the idea that I get a position that allows me to tap into the energy, the passion, and the demand that government be a force for good has been the best part in the world. And so I get to run into everyone and I have a fun story to be like, oh, like we're hanging out. I will say the thing that was, unexpected, I think some of the critiques of government and of politicians are very valid. There are people who don't care. There are people who aren't paying attention. There are people who run for office that don't even know the basic facts of their district or what the assembly does. There are people who I had other elected officials who laughed as they cut the funding for veterans
Really?
homeless shelters in our region. We had people trying to make unemployment harder to get. So I want to say that, like, for all the joy I had, the honor of representing this community, it was also met with a sober reality that our system is broken.
Yeah.
It is not working for everyday people. It is not, and it's not just Republicans.
Yeah.
Right. That we could be doing a better job across the political spectrum of being more reflective of the communities we come from and having the courage of our convictions on policies we need to know that work. And so it really has been this interesting marriage.
Right.
But I'm really excited at this next stage. One of the things that we're pushing is regulating AI data centers.
Yes.
And making sure that we protect your privacy, raising the minimum wage, doing more on housing at every income level,
Badger Care public option.
doing Badger Care public option. And again, in a world that's so defined by division, these are policies that like 70 and 80% of Wisconsinites agree on.
Yep.
And the only thing standing in the way of that policy are politicians.
Yep.
And so what I'm really hoping to do is not only stick by the courage of my convictions, but make sure that we carry that energy and that fight to Madison, that like stop standing in the way of progress. People are demanding, expecting it. So I feel really excited about this next term agenda. I really, and last I wouldn't say is like also fully funding our public schools and mental health services because we are seeing people's property taxes increase because the state legislature refuses to pay its bills.
Yep.
And so we are putting that on the backs of renters and homeowners, again, because politicians are standing in the way of progress. And so I know I'm one of them. My dream, I just think I'm an organizer in chief, not a politician. And my job is to organize our community for progress. I just happen to have this title on top of it, but I don't believe that titles matter. So to me, I'm bringing all of you with me to Madison to make a difference. And so that is what I'm so proud of, what I'm so excited about. I'm hoping to get your support for re-election this November.
Yes,
Fuck
no,
yeah. I love this
definitely.
community.
Your pod endorsement was never in doubt.
The second you decide to run for mayor, I will like literally run the soles off my shoes.
We do need to end on a quick call to action. Less kings, more queens.
It's less kings, yas queens, is what you have to say.
I'm too straight.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
Remember that the difference between being a chud and being a chad is you.
Be loud, be proud, and be unbowed.
I think my favorite one that you all have heard me say a million times, that love is an action. And what I mean by that is that show up any way that you can. If it's helping cats get homes, if it's giving people meals, if it's putting on really free markets, if it's voting, if it's running for office, love is an action. And when you love something, you stand up for it, you protect it. And everything from small to big makes a huge difference. And so my call to action is do something because you love it, and do something small or something big, but love is an action.
There's no such thing as small actions, only small activists.
Thank you for watching Resistance Radio.
Yes.